Hello, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Parshas Vayeitzei. We're going to speak a thought of the week. Yesterday was Yud Kislev, the Chag HaGeula of the Mittel Rebbe, and the day before was Tes Kislev, the Yom Ledes and Yom Lula, the Yortzeit of the Mittel Rebbe. So we'll speak about the connection with the Mittel Rebbe and the Parsha, and the main thing is some lessons from the Parsha of the week. Before that, as we mentioned before in the past couple of weeks, our hearts and minds are with our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael. We're in the middle of a war right now. I'm not sure if there's a ceasefire today as we speak or not. In any case, we need to see miracles upon miracles upon miracles, and all the hostages to come back safe. So as we mentioned before, these days we'll add tzedakah to the usual prayer also. So we're giving tzedakah now. And G'dayla tzedakah shemakareves esagula, tzedakah brings the redemption. We'll also say a prayer. And we'll connect it also to a word in the Parsha. And this is a prayer that we say in Yom Kippur. It's also a song in Chabad. Darkecha Eloheinu laharech hapecha l'royim v'latoivim v'hisi losecha lemancha Eloheinu asei v'loi lanu re'ei amidaseinu dalim v'reikim. Let me just sing it for a second and then we'll translate it. Darkecha Eloheinu laharech hapecha l'royim v'latoivim v'hisi losecha Leman cho elikeinu asay v'leilanu rei amidaseinu dalim v'reikim. So here we're turning to the Eibush. It is your way to be forbearing towards the wicked and towards the good, and that is your praise. Even if we're not perfect, you overlook it, you forgive us, and we say, Hashem, act for your own sake, not ours. Behold, that we stand before you poor and empty. I don't think there's been a day like Simchas Torah we were dalim v'reikim, poor and empty, that the Soinim, our enemies, were able to get the upper hand. Hashem allowed it, and we were humiliated, and it was a chil Hashem. How could it be that the wicked prevailed momentarily to be able to bring torture and terror and pain upon B'nai Yechidah Shel Melech Malcham Lochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, upon Hashem's only children. So lemancho elikeinu asay, for your sake, first of all, to show that those that are on the good side, those that are on the side of justice, morality, and ethics, win. And those that are connected to you, Hashem, are the ones that have a better life. But also lemancho, as we'll see according to Kabbalah and Chassidus, this was a point that we emphasize how we affect the entire Seder Shtalshlus. And we'll speak about it today. Okay. Now, today I'm going to speak about the pasuk where it says, V'hinei Hashem nitzav olav. Yaakov had a dream on his way to Choron. Vayifka b'makom, he stopped in Har Moriah. He was stopped in Har Moriah and he fell asleep and he prayed Ma'ariv over there. As we all know, I'm not going to repeat things that we all know from Cheder. But there's one of the psukim that the Rebbe chose to make a pasuk is a verse from Tanya. But that verse from Tanya starts with some words from this week's Parsha, where it says, V'hinei Hashem nitzav olav. Hashem stood on top of him. That's the literal translation. But before we talk about the pasuk, I want to tell you something. Why I chose to speak about this pasuk? Because it is so important. I came across a letter of the Rebbe a couple of years ago. It's printed in Likutei Sichos Chelik Chaf, page 570. Something which I never saw about almost anything else. Somebody wrote to the Rebbe about a certain problem, and the Rebbe answers him that he will read his letter by the tzion of the previous Rebbe, and then he says, Tilmaid Bal Peh V'hinei Hashem Nitzav Chulu Me'ayud Beis Psukim Mamore Chazal. Learn by heart the pasuk V'hinei Hashem Nitzav V'toimru, say it B'li Neder Pomim Achodes B'chol Yoim B'shvuas HaKrevim. Say this pasuk a couple of times a day in the upcoming weeks, until you see that the blemish that you caused will go away. This is mind-boggling. The Rebbe tells somebody, Chazah this pasuk, V'hine Hashem nitzav olav, a couple of times a day for the upcoming weeks, and I'll take care of your spiritual problem. I don't know any other place about any of the other psukim where it says such a thing like the letter I just read to you. In any case, of course, I mean, to make it into a question, so in this week's parsha, it speaks about Yaakov's journey to Haran, and it says that he stopped and he put stones around his head and he prayed, and then Hashem appeared to him. So what's the lesson of all of this? What's the relevance of all of this? As we spoke many times, Maisa Ovis Simil Abonim, whatever happened to our forefathers is a sign for the children. That means there are profound lessons on a simple level, not only deeper and deeper and deeper from the whatever we read in the Torah. So, let's talk about the pasuk V'hine Hashem nitzav olav. Those words, V'hine Hashem nitzav olav. The commentators say that whenever it says V'hine, and it's repeated a couple of times in the dream that Yaakov has, whenever it says V'hine, it's like a bold announcement. V'hine! This tells you that this was something epic. This is something monumental. This is something gigantic. So, Rashi on the words V'hine Hashem nitzav olav, what does Rashi say in the words nitzav olav? L'shomrei, to guard him. So, we're going to speak about a couple of lessons over here. First of all, what's the chiddush over there? V'hine Hashem nitzav olav, to guard him. Hashem is standing up on top of you to guard him. So there's a Gemara, and the Gemara is in Chulin, Daf, Tzadik Aleph, Amud Beis, and the Gemara says like this, and this you'll see the chiddush of the Pshat of it, and especially according to Chassidus, the Gemara says, Tana oilin umestaklin b'diyuknei shel maila. Oilin v'yeridim is talking about the malachim. The Gemara learns out from this that there were angels, they went up, and they saw the image of Yaakov Avinu on the Kisei HaKavod. V'yeridim umestaklin b'diyuknei shel mata. And they saw Yaakov sitting down here below. So they were angry. So they came to, they wanted to come to do l'sakune. They wanted to bring him harm, to do danger to him. Because they were jealous. The angels are lower than the Kisei HaKavod. So they saw Yaakov's image on the Kisei HaKavod, and they saw Yaakov, a human being on this planet. They came down immediately to do him harm. Miyad v'hinei Hashem nitzav olav. They saw Hashem protecting him. Hashem standing over him. V'omer Reb Shimon ben Lakish, and Reb Shimon ben Lakish said, Ilemole mikra kosov iyef shelo omrei. This doesn't say so many times. I wonder how many times in Shas we have such an expression. If the verse wouldn't say these words, v'hinei Hashem nitzav olav, that Hashem himself was protecting Yaakov, we wouldn't be able to say it. And then the Gemara says, Ka'odam shemeinef al b'noi, like a man who is standing, like a father who's standing fanning his son. If it weren't for the difference, because we have fear of Hashem, we wouldn't be able to say such a thing, Kaviyachol. But like a human father fanning his son to protect him from the sun's burning rays or from the heat. So you know, like in the olden days, there were these Peritzim, or these barons, or whatever, they would have slaves that would stand there with a fan and fan them if they were getting hot. And here, the Gemara says it, that the Lemole Mikra Kosov, if the Pasuk wouldn't say, V'hine Hashem nitzav olav, we wouldn't be able to say this. Hashem is protecting us. Now there's 2 points over here. Number one, Hashem is protecting us. Number two, Hashem's involvement with Bnei Yisrael is deeper and higher than his connection and his hashgacha over the Malachim himself. That's why the Malachim are angry. They want to have such a relationship with Hashem. What sort of relationship? Like we say in the Haggadah, that Hashem himself came down to save the Jews. Lo yedei shliach, lo yedei malach, b'chvoidei u'ba'atzmai. So too over here, when it says, V'hine Hashem nitzav olav, the whole point is that it's the Eibush himself. not Ein Sof, not lower levels, but the Eibush himself, B'chvayde Ba'atzmai, and Ilamole Mikra Kosov. If it wouldn't say it in the Pasuk, we wouldn't be able to say it. Kaviyachol, Hashem is like the father who himself is fanning his son. Wow! So one lesson straight away from this Pasuk is that not only Stam, a lower level of godliness, is involved with looking over his children or protecting them, but Hashem himself. And from here we see also the other idea, and if we take it according to the words of Chassidus, everything in creation is connected to rules of creation. Everything is a nivra. Everything is a part of creation, and therefore the rules of nature apply to them. But when it comes to the Yidden, as we spoke already many, many times, where it kivsa achas b'shivim ze'evim, the rules of nature, the rules of creation don't apply to the Jewish nation. And that's also what the Gemara says, Ein Mazal Yisrael, that we are not under the astrology or whatever things that are associated with Mazolis. We're higher than that. We're higher than the Malachim. And that's what the Pasuk is telling us. Malachim, who the Eibishter puts in charge of different things in the world, and they're supervising and they're managers only because the Eibishter appointed them. Kigazim biyad chaytzev, like a hatchet in the hands of the one who chops down the trees. But when it comes to the Yidden, we supersede, we bypass the Malachim. It's the Eibush himself. V'hine Hashem nitzav olav. And also, as the Mefarshim bring out, by the way, that this is also the connection that afterwards, right after that, in the same pasuk, it says, Vayemer ani Hashem. This is the first time we see a revelation of Hashem himself talking to Yaakov. And we'll soon see why, but it's connected with the V'hine Hashem nitzav olav. That very same level of Hashem himself is the one that now revealed himself to Yaakov. So the first point that we take from the pasuk is Hashem is guarding us. And in that itself, it's the idea that it's Hashem himself that's guarding us. And it's associated with the whole idea of the Jewish nation immortality, that it's beyond all the rules that are connected to the survival of things that are created. Now comes another message, which I haven't seen it emphasized anywhere else, but I learned a mimer of the Rebbe. This is a mimer of Ahoya Ekev Tofshin Lamed Aleph. And over there, I'm going to read you some words from the mimer itself, which is so fascinating. The Rebbe brings that V'hine Hashem nitzav olav. He brings from a medrash, but I'm going to tell you Chassidus learns pshat in this medrash. Omer Reb Yochanan harashoyim miskayimim ala likeim. The wicked stand on top of their gods. Shenema parei choylev hine oimed ala yoir. Parei is standing upon the yoir, upon the river. Aval tzadikim elikeim miskayomim aleihem. But by tzadikim, our Hashem is supported by us. Shenema v'hine Hashem nitzav olav. What does it mean that Hashem is standing on us? He's supported by us. So this is a way to kapshat. According to Chassidus, what is the Medrash saying over here? Not that he's guarding us. According to the Chassidic pshat, according to Kabbalah, it means that we are supporting him. He's on top of us because we're holding him up. Unbelievable. And I'm going to read you inside from the Maimer. Maybe I'll say Pirush Matnas Kohuna. He brings, the Tzemach Tzedek brings a Pirush from the Matnas Kohuna, so it's in a Matnas Kohuna. Shual Derech Shom Razal. This is similar to what our sages say. Bisman Sheisrael Oisim Ritzoni Shomokim. When we do the will of Hashem, we sifin koyach v'gvura. We add strength to Hashem. We sifin koyach v'gvura shel Mailo. And the opposite is also true. Ksiv, tzu yilot choteshi, which means we weaken the rock that gave birth to you. Teshi miloshen teshush koyach kaviyachol. That if a yid does not do what he's meant to be doing, he causes a weakness above. This is the Rebbe saying, let's explain in other places. Where it speaks about how Hashem forgave, like by the Meraglim, and it says, Va'ata yigdal no koyach adnai. Moshe said, now, Yigdal no koyach adnai, Hashem's powers will be increased. And then he brings a Gemara which says, Hoy l'chol ezreini. There's a Gemara where it says that Hashem was busy with the Torah. Moshe asks Hashem, what are you doing? And then Hashem says, you should have been there to help me. That's one Gemara. And that's when Moshe said, similar to Ata Yigdal no koyach kasher dibarta. Anyways, but then shebekoyach adam lamata lo yisuf koyach lamaylo lahagdul koyach adnai. A yid has the koyach to make an increase in spiritual energies. Ukeloshen Chazal, as the Gemara says, listen to this. She'omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, Hechi Yisoni b'dvarecha, you gave me life with your words. And that was also in the story where Moshe Rabbeinu was arguing with Hashem about forgiving the Yidden after Chet HaEgel. And this is the Gemara where the Gemara says, Ashrei Talmud she'Rabbi moidaloi. Happy is the student whose teacher concedes to him. Hashem Kaviyachol conceded to Moshe. And on this, the Gemara says, on connecting it to a verse, Hashem said, V'ulam chai oni, I live. And then the Gemara says, Amar Rav Rabbi Yitzchak, that the Eibishter told to Moshe, Hechisoni b'dvarecha, you have given me life with your words. So Hashem tells to Moshe, Kaviyachol, you have given me life. So here we see the point. And this is what it means. Vashem nitzav olav, like when you're sitting, when you're being supported by somebody, it means you're sitting on top of it. And I guess the point of the Medrash is that by the Goyim, they serve Hashem they serve their gods because they believe that gods will give them what they need. So in other words, the whole serving God is for selfish purposes. They don't really believe in anything. It's only because their life is going to become better because of what they're doing. So therefore they serve God. So that's what it means, that they're on top of the God. The only reason why they have a connection to a God, or they believe in any sort of powers, is because it serves them. They're being supported by their God. But by Bnei Yisrael, we're devoted to Hashem. We're doing it for Hashem's sake. Because we know that every single time when a Yid is doing Torah mitzvahs, we're Kaviyachol increasing by God, Kaviyachol. And as he brings over here, as explained in the concept of Avodah Tzorech Gavoya. Avodah Tzorech Gavoya, serving Hashem is a Tzorech Gavoya, is a need from Hashem. So we're not going to get into all the philosophical issues over here. The bottom line is Hashem decided, He chose that you should make a difference. As we'll soon say, a story of the Baal Shem Tov, which brings out this point. So first of all, we see already on the words, V'hine Hashem nitzav olav, that from these words themselves, we're telling a Yid, Hashem is relying on you. Hashem is depending on you. So first of all, we have such an unbelievable message already over here in the two-way street. On the one hand, we're saying Hashem is guarding you. That's the covenant. There's a covenant between us and Hashem. Hashem is protecting the Jews. We're a kivsach has been shivim zevim. We're a lamb surrounded by 70 wolves. And it's clearly evident. So that's one side of the coin. V'hine Hashem nitzav olav shmira. But at the same time, Hineni, we're here for you, Hashem. You decided that through our prayers, and through our praise, and through our Torah mitzvahs, you get supported by us. Hechisoni. We give Hashem life. For whatever reason, Hashem enjoys it. Hashem loves it. Hashem is getting reinvigorated. That's what the Gemara says. Through us. How astounding and astonishing is that? Now I want to say another point. Another 2 points, very short. And that is, there's a Sikha of the Rebbe Vayeitzei, Tafshin Yutes, where the Rebbe comes out. Let's rewind for a second. Let's talk about where we're at right now. The Chiddush of Pashas Vayeitzei, we have a new story, a new Chiddush. Avram Avinu, God reveals himself, Hashem reveals himself to Avram and tells him, Lech l'cha me'atzcha me'ladach me'sevicha. So there was an Avram who was living by a father who was an Oived Avodah Zarah, and Hashem comes along and says, run away. Leave your upbringing and your environment and your surroundings. They all don't believe in me. You have to go and start a new path. And you're starting a new movement, monotheism. That's Avraham Avinu. Yitzchak is told he should stay in Eretz Yisrael. He has to consolidate in-house. That's Yitzchak. And he's holy, he's considered like a carbon. Now we have the story of Yaakov. It's a new story, a new narrative. What's his narrative? Vayeitzei Yaakov Be'Beersheva. He's going out of the Chassidish home and the safe haven of his parents, two tzaddikim, Yitzchak and Rivka, and he's on the run. He's a fugitive because he has a psychopathic brother who now wants to get revenge. And where is he going to have to go? He's going to have to stay in the house of his uncle, the biggest gangster in the neighborhood. So it's a whole new story over here. Like in a way the opposite of Avram. Avram was told, go away from a negative environment. Yaakov is going into a negative environment, into hostile territory. And over there he wants to bring up 12 Shvatim. Emir Hashem. So here, the Rebbe explains, when does Yaakov get his highest revelation? Similar to Avram, who the first time we see in the Torah, the beginning of his story is where Hashem tells him, Lech lecha me'artzecha, you got to go on a journey. Lech lecha me'artzecha, and Hashem is there and he gave him all the blessings. Similar in this case, but even more so. We need a much greater heroics to accomplish what Yaakov is going to accomplish. To be in the home of his uncle the gangster and still bring up Yud Bei Shvat and Mitosei Shlema. And he's the only one who had Mitosei Shlema. Not Avram, Sheyotzim Menu Yishmael, and not Yitzchak, Sheyotzim Menu Esav. Yaakov in the house of Lavan, the biggest gangster, and he still brought up his children properly. He needed the greatest brachas, but when does he get the brachas? When it's Vayeitzei Yaakov Be'Beersheva, like we mentioned before, that's when Hashem himself appears to him and gives him the greatest blessings. And this is the message for Shlichus. The Rebbe explains about Vayeitzei Yaakov Be'Beersheva. Vayelech Haron is a message to every single person in whatever his environment is. He has to realize Hashem is with you in your journey. If your purpose is to illuminate your surroundings and elevate your surroundings, you'll get help from Hashem. So, the third message of V'hine Hashem Nitzav Olav is, when is the pasuk telling us V'hine Hashem Nitzav Olav? And then, as we mentioned before, that Hashem himself reveals himself to him. When does it happen? When it's Vayeitzei Yaakov Be'Beersheva. When he starts his journey, his shlichus of elevating the world, that's when he gets the highest revelation. Now, I want to mention, of course, a fourth point, which is the whole Tanya, chapter 41, which the Rebbe told many bochrim and students and people to learn by heart. In chapter 41 of the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, that's where this pasuk comes from. V'hine Hashem nitzav olav v'mleichol orz kvedei u'mabet olav v'veichen klois v'leiv v'mevdei karoyim. The chidush of the Alter Rebbe's emphasis is a fourth point. V'hine Hashem nitzav olav. That we're talking to you as an individual. Just like we spoke many times, the idea of Anochi Hashem Elokecha, how Judaism is about the individual relationship, the personal relationship between you and Hashem. And this is what the Alter Rebbe brings out in a moiridik point. The Eibishter drops everything, kaviyachol, maniach el yonim v'tachtonim, v'hine Hashem nitzav olav b'farat. We're talking about you have to see yourself. B'shvili nivra olam, lefichach nivra adam yichidi. You have to see yourself as someone who there's you and Hashem. And Hashem is standing over you and waiting for you to be makabel olav malchusay. And that's the point of the relationship that a person has to take seriously, where he's standing with Hashem. And that's the message primarily of the Alter Rebbe in chapter 41, see there. Now, I think there's a very important point. There's a Sikh and Chelik Aleph, where the Rebbe says, and this is what I want to bring out, that Tzemach Tzedek also brings in a Maimer, that V'hine Hashem Nitzav Olav is Rosh Tevis Onov. Vav, Yud, Nun, Ayin. Make up the letters Onov, which means humble. And that's the message over here. When a person is humble, then he merits this revelation of V'hine Hashem Nitzav Olav. And that's the Sikha Chelik Aleph, look at the Sikhas, where the Rebbe describes what is the relevance. First of all, Vayivka Mamokim, if you're going out to a strange environment, a hostile territory, first thing is connect to Hashem, daven. And then you surround your head with stones. Stones represent Oisius. Stones represent guard your head, keep your head focused, remember what it's about, it's a mission. And then I want to read to you one line where he says over here, which is mamish the same content of what the Alter Rebbe is speaking about in chapter 41, about Kabbalah Seil Malchus Shemayim, which is Bittul. And that's what he says over mit Wasser sich Yankiv herumgelegen und abgezäumt vom Welt, ad die Welt soll auf ihm nicht peilen. With what did Yaakov surround himself and protect himself that the world shouldn't have an impact? Mit avonim davke, with stones. Nit mit kin seichel, brains and intellect won't protect you. Nit mit kin hergish, feelings alone won't do it either. Nor mit avonim, with stones. Sugat doimim, something which is inanimate. Was hotten sich nit kin chayes, you might be missing inspiration. Und afilu nit kin nefesh hatzemeches, it doesn't have a soul of growth. But what did he surround himself? With stones, which represent doimim. And what does that mean? If you go into the world and you don't want it to have an impact on you, tell Hashem, Hineni, you're ready to do what's right and what Hashem wants. And that means avonim, that represents stones. Seichel and Heger zijn een wenig to them. Your inspiration, your intellect, and your feelings are poor to arm yourself against what's coming your way. Now, darf sich fühlen wie ein Even Doimim. Make yourself like a stone. Im Loishe visi v'demamti v'nafshi ka'ofar lakilti. That's what he says over here. That's also what it says about Yaakov. Mimona ofar Yaakov u'mispas reiva. So we see again, the idea is the Bnei Yisrael are compared to Offer, and that's why right afterwards, when you see the pasuk where it says V'hine Hashem Nitzav, what comes right after that? Hashem gives them a blessing, and the greatest blessing is V'ho yozaracha kafara oretz ufaratzto yomo v'kedmo v'tzafoino v'negba. There's many interpretations of what it means V'ho yozaracha kafara oretz, but in the spirit of what we're speaking about right now, what does it mean that we should be like the dust of the earth? It means the Jews have the ability to be humble. And the greatest quality of the Jewish nation is the humility. And with humility, that's how you get far. The Rebbe once said a pshat, Mi Yokum Yaakov Ki Kotenhu. What gives us strength? What gives us Yokum? The real endurance? Ki Kotenhu, because we're small. When you have humility, when you're nullified, then you're able to go further. And this is also the famous pasuk, as we spoke many times. Not because you're the many that Hashem choose you. And why did Hashem choose you? Because you're from the few. What does it mean you're the few? See Rashi over there. You make yourselves humble. So we see that through humility, everything that we're speaking about in the pasuk, V'hine Hashem Nitzav Olav, comes behemshich to first Yaakov humbled himself. He connected to Hashem, he prayed, and that brought him the greatest revelation. Everyone knows the famous story of the Baal Shem Tov, very similar to what we're talking to about the second meaning of V'hine Hashem Nitzav Olav, that Hashem is on top of us, we are supporting him. So everyone knows the story, I'll just say it very quickly. The Baal Shem Tov in his years, for many years, he was incognito. And he had an avodah. One of the Baal Shem Tov's things was to go around telling Yidden to praise Hashem. He would go over to someone and say, "Was machst du? How are you? How's everything?" And he would wait for the person to say, "Baruch Hashem, Gleib der Eibishter, thank you Hashem, Baruch Hashem," etc. So, al upon him, the point was that there's a story that he was in a certain town, and there was a Parish, someone who was holy. He was learning Torah for 50 years, and the Baal Shem Tov walked over to him and he asked him, "How are you?" And this person was immersed in his Talmud, and he didn't answer. He ignored the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov said, "Was machst du?" And he ignored the Baal Shem Tov again, and he ignored the Baal Shem Tov a couple of times, till finally the Baal Shem Tov told him, "Why are you denying from Hashem's sustenance?" This time, this person looked up. He was living a life of abstinence and holiness, and he sees somebody telling him, "Why are you denying Hashem's sustenance?" So he asked the Baal Shem Tov, "What do you mean?" So the Baal Shem Tov said, "We are sustained from Hashem. Hashem sustains us. But who sustains Hashem?" And then the Baal Shem Tov told him, this is the meaning of the pasuk, "Ve'ata kodesh." Hashem is holy and transcendental. Yoshev, he's sitting upon Tehilos Yisrael, the praise of the Jewish nation. So, in Yiddish we say, Mezitzav Kes, somebody who's being supported by his father-in-law. He had a dowry. He's saying he's sitting on his dowry. When you say he's sitting upon something, it means he's supported by it. So the Baal Shem Tov told this person, who was a genius, a Torah scholar, he told him, you should know that when you give a praise, Baruch Hashem, Geleibt is the Rebishter, praise be Hashem, that's how Yoshev, Hashem is being supported. Every time you say, thank you, Hashem, Hashem is being supported. He's getting sustenance, like we spoke today, all from that mimer of Ekev, Tafshel Amud Hey, see there. And this is the connection to the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe was unbelievable, humble. It says something which is so astonishing, and that is that he did not get an aliyah to the Torah because he felt himself too small. We're dealing with a tzaddik gomer, a leader, a reye nemon, a nasi b'Yisrael, and he was ashamed to get an aliyah and to be called to the Torah. He was called to the Torah once a year by the aliyah of Kol Ha'Orem by Simchas Torah. He would be called to the Torah with all the kids on the Bar Mitzvah on Simchas Torah. He made himself like a small child before Hashem. That's how great was his humility. And we have to learn from the Mittler Rebbe that we should also be humble. What got me thinking so much today also about this subject is a talk from the Rebbe also talking about the name of Reuven. And this is what we feel like right now. There's a pasuk that says, "Vatar Leah vatelet bein vatika shmei Reuven ki omra ki ra Hashem ba'oni ki ata yevoni ishi." And Leah had a child, and she called him Reuven, and she said, "Hashem has seen my humiliation, for now my husband will love me." And the Rebbe explains in a Sikha, in volume 22, page 196, that even though we live through times that are Hashem ba'oni, Hashem has seen my humiliation. What happened this year on Simchas Torah was a major humiliation, connected to Golus. But nevertheless, like we said before, we're loyal to Him. We're doing what He wants, because we know that He has nachas ruach, lefonai shamarti v'naseh ritzoni. And this causes ki ata yeveni ishi, that Hashem loves us even more. So the Eibush should help. We should see Hashem's love in a revealed way. B'toiv anirev anigler. We're holding between the days of Yud Kislev of the Chag HaGeula of the Mittler Rebbe to Yutes Chof Kislev of the Chag HaGeula of the Alter Rebbe, and we should all have and be redeemed immediately. Pod b'sholem nafshi b'gula mitzvah shlema. Take it from Miyad Mamish.